Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide.
Hi, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
We have some places we want to shout out again. If you've been listening, you know that we have been acknowledging our listeners from across the world and across the nation because we're so grateful for all of our preschool peeps, and we want you to come and listen and see if we shout you out. Yeah. So who do we have this week before we start this topic?
This week, we're shouting out Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
So, of course, I've heard of Malaysia, but must be a reason why I've heard of Kuala Lumpur.
I've heard of that too, but I don't know the reason either.
What are you all famous for? Because it's ringing a bell for some reason.
Right?
All right. Let us know what you're all famous for. Go to howpreschoolteachersdoit.com and send us a contact form message, please.
And then we'll talk about it when we shout out again.
It's going to come to me like in the middle of the night, like, oh, that's why I know that location.
She'll text me at 2 a.m. and then I'll respond when I wake up.
That's how it's going to go.
That's usually how it goes.
That's how it's going to go. But it's going to come to me at some point, like, why does this particular location in Malaysia sound so familiar to me?
There must be something there. Something famous there. Anyway, and also to the people of Orem, Utah. And I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. So if I'm not, let us know. But Orem, Utah.
How else would you say it?
Orem?
Okay. People of Utah, you contact us with some pronunciation for that. We're glad to have you. We're glad to have everyone who's coming and listening to this podcast and who frequently tells us how much they enjoy it. So we just keep doing it. Yeah. And today, while we're doing it, we're going to talk about some confusion that I've noticed in the early childhood workforce. Perhaps you have noticed it as well. I will, let's start with something that we've talked about before, just to remind everybody where we're coming from with this. Sharing is a widely held expectation, according to research, for children who are like mid-pre-K and up. So you might have some mid-pre-K children able to truly share. You might have some children acquiring that ability in kindergarten, first grade. And, let's face it, I know some adults who don't really share. So sharing is a developmental activity because in order to share, you have to understand the perspectives of other people.
Yes. That
they also have wants and needs. And and when we understand that, we can better work together with them. Yes. Now, sometimes I walk into early childhood settings. There are two children taking turns using something, and I'll hear the adults say, that's great sharing. The thing is, that's not sharing.
That's not sharing. Yeah.
And I want to be very careful when working with children to label things the way they really are, because my concern is that those 3-year-olds who really are, most of them, not developmentally ready to share yet. And so they have learned to take turns through a lot of teacher modeling. And that's what they're doing. They're taking turns. My concern is that as they get older, someone's going to say to them, why aren't you sharing that? And they're going to think they are because they're taking turns.
That's true. Okay. Yeah.
So I want to be really specific about the difference. And I want to encourage all of our preschool peeps to use these terms properly with children so that they know what they are actually accomplishing.
Yes.
Taking turns is using something one at a time. I use it, then Allison uses it, then I use it, but we're not using it all at the same time.
At the same time.
Right?
Yes.
That is taking turns. Sharing is using something together all at once.
Yes.
So I'm trying to think of an example of that. What have you got?
It's not a child way, but I typically like to think of it as food. Okay. When you have a cake, say you baked a cake.
Okay.
And the cake is whole.
She's saying this because we're going to the bakery after we record.
That's right. I've also been watching The Bear. So, okay. So, when you have cake, which I don't know if I'm sharing my cake later, but anyway, the cake is whole and you are going to share this cake by dividing it up and you are all going to eat it at the same time.
And you are not taking turns
eating it.
You are sitting together, sharing the cake because you
Yes.
each have a slice of the one cake.
Yes.
And you are sitting and eating it together.
Yes.
So therefore you are sharing the cake.
Sharing the cake.
So let's say we have children who are in dramatic play.
Mm-hmm.
They are all playing restaurant together. We can go to those children and say, I really like the way you are sharing the restaurant together.
Yeah.
Because they're doing it all at once.
Yeah. I would say that'd be like also like maybe sharing the space. You're all in the same space. You are all playing and you might not be playing the same thing, but you are sharing the space.
So you can go over and say, I really like the way that you're sharing this restaurant space.
Yes, the restaurant space.
Right? You're sharing. And then we need to explain to the children, you're sharing the restaurant space because you're using it all at the same time.
Yeah, I would say it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas the children who are in the block area, who both want the car that they're driving around the blocks. One child has the car right now, and then they're going to pass that car to another child.
Yeah.
That is taking turns. They may be sharing the space.
They're sharing. Yeah.
But they are taking turns with the object.
Correct. Because there's no way to use that together, I don't think, unless you cut it in half.
Sometimes we share space and sometimes we don't.
Right.
Like we can take turns going over to the library area. It's a small area for 2 to 3 children with soft seating. And so we can take turns going over to an area. Like when you're done, someone else is going over. Yes. Or even in like a block area or dramatic play, or when we say 4 children fit over here, there are 4 children there. Someone is on our waiting list to go over there. And so they're going to take turns with someone else in that space.
Right.
Okay. They will be sharing that space with the children they're playing with, but they might not be sharing objects.
Correct.
So I think, and let me know if I'm saying this correctly, Alison, I think we share space with people frequently, but we don't always share objects.
Correct. That's correct.
So when we're talking about teaching children about sharing, what we're trying to teach them is both, here's how we share this space. You sometimes don't we have to say to children, you need to move over a little so she can fit over here. We're teaching them how to share space.
Yes.
And we need to teach children, if you use it and then someone else uses it, you've taken turns. If you two are using this at the same time, you are sharing it.
Sharing.
And even this, you can share a bucket of markers. We're all using the markers from this bucket at the same time. But we are taking turns using the orange marker.
Yes, I would say the markers as a whole are being shared. The individual markers are being turn taking. Right? That's how it gets a little wacko. But like, it's
a very subtle distinction, but I think it's a distinction that needs to be made for the children.
Yes.
Don't you wonder if we know adults who don't share because they never learned that distinction?
There's a lot of adults that don't share.
There are many adults who don't. And adults who you're not required to share everything. I don't share everything. I don't share my computer or my iPad or my husband or my car.
Yeah, I think that's why sharing is a very complicated topic to teach about, right? Because you're telling the children, you share everything. And then you go home, and you're like, well, you're not sharing my house or my car or my husband or my dog or whatever it is. And so it's like, why all day are we telling these children, you have to share, you have to share, you have to share, when really you mean turn taking, because we also don't take turns with our house, so like, I think it's just a complicated concept for them to understand.
It's even like this. You and I right now are sharing the use of the computer.
Correct.
We're sharing the use of my computer. Mm-hmm. But we are taking turns speaking.
Correct.
As best we can, because we overtalk each other all the time and we know it. So, you can stop writing the reviews about that.
We know. We can't help it.
That's honestly the cultures. That's the cultures we come from.
It's true.
Okay.
It is true. It's also just who we are as people, I think.
Right. So you all can stop writing about that in the star ratings or whatever. We know. Okay. We know. But I think I think even within what children are doing, to say things to them like, I like the way you are sharing the manipulatives table together and the way that you're taking turns with the magnifying glass.
Yes.
So that they understand the difference. And I think if we juxtapose them like that, right, we put them next to each other and we say what you're doing right now, probably honestly is often both.
Yeah.
Sharing without being aware that that's what you're doing, without having it sort of threaten you in any way.
Right.
You're sharing, but you are taking turns with the objects usually. Yeah. And I think to say to children things like, you are sharing this library space with each other very nicely. You're working together nicely here to make room for each other.
Yeah.
And then I see you're taking turns with the books.
Right. Now, I think if two children were sitting next to each other and looking at the same book, now they're sharing the book. See, there, I knew I would figure out a child example. And there it is. So if they are looking at the same book, now they are sharing the book. But if one child's over here and they're reading the book and then afterwards they give it to Cindy, then that is taking turns with the book,
right,
and sharing the space.
I just want children to be really clear on what they're being acknowledged for and what their actions are.
Yeah.
You never know what makes children curious. Like if I say to children, I like the way you're sharing this block area and I appreciate that you're taking turns with the car. A child might be like, aren't we sharing the car? And they have to think about then, what did that mean? What did this person say? If I would not put it beyond a child, especially as they head toward 4 years old, to look up at you and say, we're sharing the car. And then we can explain to them, you're taking turns with the car because you're not using it at the exact same time.
Right. Yeah.
And I can just picture children one child putting their hand on the car and another child putting their hand on the car and telling them, now you're sharing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think it's important for them to know that because I would like them to grow up to be adults who understand the difference between turn taking and sharing and maybe are willing to do some sharing sometimes with some things.
Right. Right.
If you're listening from home, just know that your children don't have to share everything with siblings and visitors. People don't share everything. That's not even part of human nature. We all need things that we individually possess that are just our own and that we treasure.
Yeah.
So you can decide with children, for example, if you're having friends over, before they come, you can say to the children, what do you not want to have out when these children come? Because if it's something that they don't want to, quote unquote, share with the other children, they're not going to want to do either one. They're not going to want to use it all together or take turns.
Correct.
They just don't want the other children touching it.
Yeah.
So if we say to children when they're having people over in their homes, something like, what do you want to put away so that they can't have it or touch it when they're here, and give them the option to put a few things away.
Right. And I think that they should have ownership over their things. I often do that. Like if a child brings in something from home, like I often will do a sharing day and they bring something from home. And there's some teachers are like, oh, you have to share that with everyone. I'm like, no, it's yours. If you don't want to share it, that's fine. You have the option of putting it away. Like if you're okay with people taking turns with it, that's yours. That's your choice. But you also have the choice to not do that because it's yours.
Yeah. I think we have to be clear. I always think we have to be clear with other human beings, period, young or old. And I think this is one of the places where we're not always clear in our expectations. And so as they get older and they're thinking, why are they upset with me? I am sharing and they're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Then hopefully they'll understand it better and know the expectation as they do get older.
Yeah.
And turn taking is something I think we teach from like that infant room on up.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Turn taking. I was in an infant room recently and they have like this, it's not a ball pit. It's sort of like this small round area that has a mat around it where they have like small foam blocks and things like that. It is a lot of fun. And I'm talking foamy foam because they are infants. And so in that round space, you can sort of take an infant and put them in there and have them have this wonderful sensory experience with these blocks. Yeah, it was really great. Yeah. But they can't fit more than one or two infants at a time in this space. So what are they doing? They're helping the infants take turns. And I think even aloud in the infant room, we want to say to the children, like, okay, it is Joey's turn in the block pit.
Yeah.
Joey's going to take his turn and put it in.
Yeah.
Not we are sharing it. They're not sharing it.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we've done it. I think we've ironed it out.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else agrees, but if you do agree that we have ironed this out, feel free to contact us, which you can do at howpreschoolteachersdoit.com and our Facebook page, How Preschool Teachers Do It. And by the way, go check out at Cindy Tarabush on Instagram, because I have reels on there, very short videos about jargon in the early childhood world, about things that people should think about. And I would love to have you follow me. Okay, folks, we will catch you next time on the podcast.
Bye, peeps.